Kicked off. I'm guessing you all are slowly getting invited into the room. We'll be waiting just a bit for other folks to join. But if you are here, thanks for being on time. You're an awesome educator. And just take a minute to look. Let's see if I get yes, right over there in the corner of your screen. You'll see an option for chat. If you could just drop your name in there, let our admins know who you are, where you're from, maybe if you're a customer or not, etc. That's great because we'll be leveraging that chat periodically throughout the webinar.
Good morning, everybody.
One thing to mention, your chats don't go public. We have to kind of approve them to pop up. So no worries there. You're not calling out to everybody, etc. Great. And I'm guessing folks are going to trickle in as the session goes. But I'll start with some introductions. Hi, everyone. My name is Sergio Villegas. I'm a regional sales manager here at Lightspeed Systems, here to present on our Edtech Overload, the 3R framework. And also, let me introduce Kate McDermott, our product director.
Hi, everybody. Nice to meet you all.
Very good. I got asked to do this webinar and eagerly accepted because my background before I was at Lightspeed, I worked in K-12 for over a decade, starting as a teacher, became a tech coach for my high school, county, and then a coordinator for the County Office of Ed in California where I worked. So the topic of today, looking at these different frameworks and pieces, is very near and dear to my heart. And just a quick context check, like keywords, we're going to be reviewing, and you're going to be hearing this a lot, this idea of this 3R framework, which is part of your invite, right? And what is a risky app, right? These unknown apps that pull data and privacy issues. Rogue apps, monitoring both the known and the unknown, the things that we don't even know are there. And then the ROI, that return on investment. How do we understand the use of this stuff in our environment? And all of this matters uniquely at this time and space, right? We're living in this post-COVID world. And we're coming from a time where we had this growth of use. We had a lot of money to do that with. And then fast forward, 2024, that money is going away, and we need to make a lot of good decisions. In order to make those decisions, we need to understand. And that makes sense. So think about the growth where we were buying or seeking out anything to keep teachers alive because we went digital overnight. And so because of that, the impact is what we're seeing across all of our customers is more than 2,000 apps in use across the student population. That is not an average. And as much as what I mean by that, it's not like the big schools have a lot more and the small schools have a lot less and we averaged it out. No, that is no matter what the school, everyone is within that 2,000 app range. And that makes sense post-COVID. And as I mentioned already, the money is now going away, right? We're seeing a drop in over 1,000 students, $1,000 per student with the loss of this ESSER funds that have been available. And so, especially this time of the year, I'm sure you're all in conversations about what to keep, what to cut, looking for ways to trim budget. And then, depending on where you are in the country, this is going to be a different reality. But at the end of the day, because so many more students are online, so many more students have devices that they're on all the time, every day, that are truly theirs, states have responded to ramp up data privacy requirements. Up 40 of them have some sort of legislation in place. And the rest, I can assure you, I lived through this in California, where the state that I grew up, it's coming. It is coming. And for all of us, we've got other reasons to start to need to pay attention to this side more. And these are the things, this climate that I've just described is why there's a need for this digital insight product, a product that can give you the value and the security, give you the insights, and a way to kind of review and respond and put systems in place. That's what we're here to talk about today. Kate will be here sharing specifically about the product relative to the needs as we work through. I'll be kind of here as the voice of the districts that I work with and the districts that I've worked in. So let's get started. First thing is a poll. Lots of y'all are here, but there were also lots of subtly different value points that we could be talking about today that brought you to the webinar. We're curious which one represents you. Which one represents your needs the most? Which of these matter most to you? Granularized reporting, managing data privacy. Is ROI on spend a big conversation that the district doesn't have fast answers to? Or do you really want to build a robust approval process? 30 more seconds to let some answers come in. And we're so keen to see where this is because we want to spend the time on what matters most to y'all. App request and approval, Kate.
I know, my favorite section. That's what I would vote for if I could vote.
Mine at my schools would have been the ROI on spend. That is where we all knew, from the principal to the superintendent to the teachers, that we weren't using everything to its fullest, but nobody had an efficient way to do that. Yeah. All right, so you guys, I think you guys can see we've got approval. An app request is number 1, data privacy management number 2, ROI on spend number 3, granularized centralized reporting number 4. Today's agenda, we're going to go through these 3 R's and through this kind of app cycle that we've kind of built through this product, right? And it's going to kind of come in 3 parts, right? First, it all starts with visibility. No matter which of these things over here that mattered to you, right? That's the visibility, the vetting, and the systems. It all starts with understanding in that visibility. And that matters because we know what we know, and sometimes we know what we don't. But the hardest part is, how do you get to that mystery box on the far left there? What do you need in order to accomplish this? What options schools typically go through absent anything? And what can digital insights do to level it up? So I will preface that when it comes to information, here are the things that were very important to me when I was a school leader for instructional technology. Information needed to be consistent, right? I needed the metrics to be the same if I was comparing systems. It needed to be to know that I'm apples to apples. Helps that I was a science teacher, really mattered to me, right? Completeness, I can't have gaps, right? I need trust to know that what I'm looking at is everything. And centralized. At some point, I might have been getting information, but there are other people who needed it. Sometimes it was IT, sometimes it was curriculum, sometimes it was a soup. But if I was a bottleneck and I wasn't on campus that day, then we couldn't get to the information. So having a centralized way for everyone to access, these are the foundations, whether it's digital insight or something else. This is what I want you guys to key in. Last thing though, fast. I tell you, speed is better than perfect. If it takes too long, it doesn't matter. So fast first. You're going to hear that a lot from me. The current options, whether I'm talking to customers or my experience in K-12, is a couple of things. Provisioning tools often give you some analytics, like the Clevers and the class links, that can be pretty good when they Clever or class link in, and then you get a drop off in reliability after that. There's also brute force options, which a lot of districts will lean on in times of need, right? Shoot, I just need to know right now, okay, I'm going to find out who has that login credentials, get into that one vendor that I have access to, and try to find it out. And that doesn't really scale across even the apps is going to be in the hundreds. Or maybe getting into the firewalls and filter reports tend to be URL based, and those have their own gaps. But that's really it. And so what I want to talk about is how you can get the data you need. That's right, at light speed, fast. So imagine, Kate, if I'm a tech director and I'm in a board meeting and we're having these conversations about some budget things. There's things that we suspect, and when people ask, well, how much is it really being used? Is it worth keeping? All eyes turn to me. What tools do you give me to, again, not have to say, okay, everybody, let's wait a week and I'll get back to you? What can we give people to be able to get information and get it fast?
Yeah, I'm happy to show you. So I'm going to be walking you all through some screenshots of our actual product to give you a sense of, when these questions are happening, coming up in real life, how can you actually use this product to answer them? So starting with, you need to know everything. You need to report on everything in use. Our app activity report, when Sergio says fast, this is immediate. You're going to have every single app in use across your ecosystem, whether it's accessed on a Mac, by a teacher, by a student, whether it's accessed once through the SSO 10 times, 1,000 times. It's all in one place for you. That number at the top, 1,300, that's actually, like Sergio mentioned, when we looked at all of our districts, all the data we had, the average, large or small, was upwards of 2,000 apps. So that's a pretty realistic number for what you might see in your own district. And then, of course, we've got some great metrics to really tell you the story of not only what is in use, but how often is it in use and how is it being used. You've got unique users, so that's telling you how many people are accessing that application. Engagements is how often. And active window is going to give you a sense of how much is this actively being used? How long is this the active screen on that student's device? And then one of our R's is redundant apps. You can filter that list by any subject area to get a sense of, hey, for math apps, for example, do we have 2 that do the exact same thing? And that's what's going to be really helpful when you're doing that ROI analysis throughout the school year. And Sergio mentioned granular apps. So not only can you look at all of this data across your district to get this kind of global picture and see maybe the one app in use, that a teacher found at a conference, maybe only their class is using it, but it could potentially be risky. You can find that from that broad picture. But it also gets very, very granular. So you get a really great look at campus usage, grade usage, all the way down to the student level. And that's really critical in really telling the full story of how these apps are being used, and being able to do that reporting at the school site level or at the district level.
And so I love that example, Kate, going back here between grades and school buildings, because you might see, look at that, 26% right from South Elementary. But if you dig deeper into the grade levels, it might turn out that 4th and 5th grade are killing it, and it's the rest of the teachers. So don't stick everybody into the PD, or maybe trim the licensing just down. But the availability to do that fast really, really helps my districts kind of have those conversations without delay. And we've already got people kind of talking about this in the chat, but some version of the question of what goes into making this happen? How do you get the reality that you guys are claiming that you're getting? Kate, can you kind of pull up the hood a little bit and just kind of explain the technicals behind getting this information into
Absolutely.
digital?
And while I explain it, if there's any questions in the chat, I'll see if I can address them here, but I'm not as good at multitasking. So I'm happy to explain kind of how this works. So it's a 3-leg stool. You've got the agents, the roster, and our app library all working together to give you that really great picture. So on the agent side, we've got device level agents that across all operating systems. So we're Windows, Mac, iOS, Chrome, and Edge. So regardless of how a student is accessing an app, whether it's through the SSO or just a downloaded application or a web app, regardless of how they're accessing it, our devices are going to be reporting all of that data to us. We leverage your roster to figure out who the student is or the teacher, and associate that with the right campus and grade and course and section. So that's how you're going to get that sort of different looks at the data. And then our app library, which has been like 20 years in the making with Lightspeed's content filtering background, has tells us what. So it tells us which domains are associated with which applications. That's tricky in a world where there's a lot of acquisitions and one company buys another company and the domains change. We have a team of experts who are maintaining that content library and that app library to make sure that when the student's on the device, we can tell them exactly who they are from the roster and exactly what app that is from our library. And those things all come together to give you the data, or to give you the data that I showed you a few slides back on that report.
I want to really dive into, Kate, that the importance of having a robust library. If you've been looking at solutions of this, being able to know that 2 years ago, Eureka Math rebranded to Great Minds, and this summer they changed their host URL from greatminds.com to digital.greatminds.com. If you're not keeping up with that, then your accuracy is going to go down. There are like 6 different URLs that track back to Amplify. So this isn't something that you can just turn on. This is a product that's over 8 years old. And it is for people who are existing customers, this is a separate extension app, etc., DMG, MSI, for the different OS types from your filter. However, if you're not a customer, you don't need our filter to run this. So very, very important. Most people across the country know Lightspeed is a filter company, but if you're in a 5-year contract with somebody else, but this tool's really unique. So I work with tons of schools that have a different filter, but are looking at this for the reasons that we're talking about today. The applications track anything that hits the wire. So if it is a application that calls out to the web, we're going to be able to report on it, even if it's not happening through the browser. So while we are browser agnostic, we do not rely on the browser to report activity.
It's a great point, Sergio.
And so in review, right, it's this whole idea of fast. It's all coming from one place, and it's centrally available, and it's tracking as the activity happens. That consistency is important. We're going to report on your unique users for Pear Deck and Nearpod. So if you want to make comparisons across those two, while each vendor might have their own subtly different analytics, that makes it hard to understand which one you want to land on. Complete, again, browser doesn't matter. OS type doesn't matter. Even if it's not through the browser, we're still going to be able to capture activity. And centralized. If you're IT, a local tech coach, curriculum, everyone has access to the information where it's housed behind a single pane of glass. Before we move on to kind of that next section, right, we're going to look at like what we can do now that we have all this information. I wanted to just double check, and please, if there are any questions, add them to the chat. We're going to pause for 30 seconds. Chromebooks use an extension. just answering some of the questions in place. iPads, it's a mix of a local app along with an integration with the web content filter profile and the MDM that helps us identify where the device is, who it's located to, how it's mapped out. Macs, it's a DMG Windows executable file.
It is currently part of the suite. I think that might have been the question. Yes, you could get it right now.
Okay, so go on to the next section, but keep the questions coming. Our moderators will flag stuff up where appropriate. So looking at the next part, right, we have this information now, whether it's the stuff that you know, the stuff that you didn't, you now have this vast array of information. What else can we do? And this is where it comes and taking considerations into data privacy, right? How can we start to app vets efficiently now that we know there's what's out there? It's time to start making some decisions. And again, how do we keep tabs on not just the things that happened 6 months ago, but things that came in rogue yesterday? We're going to look at all those things in kind of the second section. And the curious part here is, because I work with 8 states across the union, is this idea of where you are on data privacy, right? Because when a teacher finds a new tool or app, there's things to consider now. Maybe your district has an approved apps list. You're really trying to get up and running and communicate that through your principals. Maybe you're just dealing with the Google requirement now where teachers can't just log in with Google anymore. Once a student hits that, if they're under 18, Google's going to block them, and they're putting it on IT teams to make those decisions and therefore be accountable to what those decisions mean when it comes to student information. Maybe you're in a state where the IT team, typically falls to them, has to vet student privacy requirements. Maybe you are currently processing DPAs because you're taking it to that level. Do you have requirements for parents, either indirect, informed, or direct consent? So I'm curious, because again, we've got people from across the nation in here. Which of these best describes where you and your district are on your data privacy journey? I'm gonna give 30 seconds for people to drop in. Which one sounds like you? Hot topic and been there for a while. Just starting to heat up for us. Interested, but no clue where to start. Or not a priority for us in the moment. I get that everyone knows it's important, but we got networks to run. So that's totally fine.
Hot topic, it seems, is the hot topic.
Well, we do have 40, right? We did say at Crowell in the beginning, like over 40 states in the union have some version of data privacy requirements in the state. So for a lot of us in the room, right, we want to, this has been a thing going for a while. For some of us, it's just starting to heat up. For the bottom percentage, interested but no clue where to start. And understandably, hard to say that data privacy is not a priority. And I get that too, right? We only have so much time. So, Kate, now that I can uncover things quickly, can you kind of overview, given some of the responses in the room, where we can go from there? Like, what tools do we have to kind of, again, make this all happen faster?
Absolutely. So we're going to go back to that report, that apps and use report that I started with. And it's really critical when you first, deploy agents, you pretty much immediately are going to start seeing data in this report. It's important not just to zero in the things that you knew about. That it's great. And you're going to want to, you're going to be very curious about an app that you know about and you've invested in. You're going to say, hey, how is this being used? But it's just as important to understand what else is out there that you didn't know about. And that gets to that red pie chart that Sergio showed earlier, the part that you don't know. And so in this case, we're going to take an example of a typing app. We're going to say EduTyping is the app that you knew about. You've invested in it. You've trained your teachers, your staff. This is the one that you're hoping everybody uses. You could start by looking directly at EduTyping, or what we would recommend is start just typing in typing and see what else is out there. You're going to be surprised to see, or maybe not, because we're telling you this now, that there's going to be a lot out there that you didn't know about. So in this case, we've got 10 typing apps in use at this district, and we're going to pick on NitroType. So we're going to look at this app, NitroType, that you didn't know about, that has almost as many engagements as EduTyping. So we're going to dig in a little bit, and we're going to get a sense of, is NitroType something that we want our students to be using? So for every app in our library, we have a robust profile that contains lots of great information, from global stats that's looking across all of Lightspeed's client base to see who else has it trending. So how widely uses it, how many have approved it, how many are paying for it. You get that campus and grade level breakdown that we showed you earlier. That's just for your district. And then third-party reviews is what I want to show you all on the left-hand side. We're going to drill in there to get a sense of student data privacy, which was the number one thing you all were interested in hearing about. So for student data privacy, we've got two great partnerships at Lightspeed, one with Edtech and one with the Student Data Privacy Consortium. We've also got our own privacy policy monitoring that I'm going to show you in just a moment. But you're going to start here because you're going to be wondering, is this app compliant with GDPR, FERPA, COPA? And that's where you're going to get this quick snapshot from Edtech of how safe is this app to use. And then in combination with the SDPC data, you can also see how many active data privacy agreements are on file in your state and also in your district. So together, these two pieces of information are going to help you make a quick decision on, am I okay to use this, or is this something that we may potentially need to consider blocking? And then I mentioned privacy policy monitoring. So Lightspeed, we have our own technology to actually monitor all the privacy policies in our app library. And our app library has upwards of 7,000 apps at this point. It's always growing. But what we're going to do is show you how often those privacy policies are changing. And I think Sergio, he shared a stat earlier. I think it's 91% of apps we saw last year had a change. We're not trying to pick on this one app. We just picked one example, and you can see it's pretty common that they change a lot. And so what we're doing is monitoring this on your behalf. So you don't have to worry so much about what's happening, in this case, week over week with some of these policies. We're going to actually tell you what's changed, and we'll show you later how we can actually push that out to you proactively.
Okay, we had a lot of people in the room mention that data privacy has been kind of a hot topic for a while. And so I did want to make a plug for why this matters for schools in general. Independent of digital insights, when you have a data privacy agreement, if you love NitroType, that's fine. As soon as they sign those agreements, you're no longer beholden to their default terms of service and privacy policies. They can make all the changes they want, but because you now have the company that signed off on your agreement, you don't have to watch those weekly pieces anymore. And the best thing that we've built is a filter where you can pull out specifically the data privacy agreements in your state. Because if these districts, in this case Texas, have an agreement with NitroType, I can copy that and get them to sign off in one email rather than the back and forth. So now we're going into just saving the time in vetting, because over and over again, whenever we push out quarterly customer surveys, that's one piece that always comes up, is the time that I'm saved vetting tools. I had two districts, Missouri and Texas, where they actually had a 50% of one IT team member's salary that goes into vetting tools. Just pulling up a profile that has a privacy policy linked right there kind of was jaw-dropping for him, because the time it takes to hunt and peck, they're not always where they should be. But combine that with the collection of the quick FERPA COPA checks, available DPAs in my state, is just a game changer, and the time that we can save our districts.
On that note, Sergio, I was just going to say, we have a stat. We do periodic polls because we want to know how much time we're saving clients. And the latest coming back, I did a survey last week in Digital Insight. It was coming back at 2 to 3 hours per app of time savings. And with 2,000 apps in use, I'm not saying anybody's reviewing all 2,000, but even if you're reviewing 150, that's a lot of time looking at privacy policies.
We looked at one app, right, which is a pretty good. I know you feel like we're picking on NitroType, but frankly, when an app is useful and cool and free, schools aren't the customer, but someone else is, and that's what we're trying to pay attention to. Well, we looked at one, but there are many. Like we saw other typing apps, just in that example from the district we screenshotted. What else can we do to kind of keep track of the rogue stuff that we haven't reviewed? Yeah,
it's really important. And we at Lightspeed, we're always trying to push things in your direction so that you don't have to spend so much time looking for what you need to find. So there's sort of two key things I want to point out. One, we have an entire dashboard focused on student data privacy. The two widgets here, the one on the left is going to show you new apps in use. Sergio gave an example earlier of a new app in use today or yesterday. That time interval filter in the screenshot is set to the last 30 days. You could set it to yesterday and say, what apps are new to my network? And if you've been a client, some folks have had our Digital Insight agents for 5-6 years, never before seen apps on your network. You can look at that over several time periods straight from this. This could be your main homepage when you log in. It's up to you to set that. And then on the right, you've got apps without approval status with student login. That's essentially saying, what apps are students logging into? So they're these apps have this PII on my student that I have not reviewed. And then the usage, it gives you a sort of a stack ranking of, I need to start with this top one, because there's a lot of kids, a lot of email addresses that they're collecting on behalf of my students. And I have never looked at this privacy policy. I've never reviewed this application or learned more about it. The other thing I want to point out, I mentioned, we showed you our privacy policy monitoring just a few minutes ago. We also have email notifications so that you can get proactively emailed about that once a week to say, hey, here's what changed that you've already approved or licensed. So, our system knows your approved apps. It knows what you're paying for. That's what we're designed to do, is to help you with those workflows. We keep an extra eye on those, and send you emails proactively when things have changed, because we know sometimes they're small changes and they don't mean anything, but there can be some pretty meaningful changes to these policies that are definitely worth a second look.
Okay, we got a question that's come up a few times from Aaron about, can we tell you which tools are being used on campus versus at home? That's a filter, and you set that up against your school's start and stop date. So if you set your start time to 7 a.m. because kids arrive at like 7:15 on campus and start getting on their devices to say 4, anytime outside of that will report back as after school, out of school use. A great example is, I want to know the difference between ChatGPT on campus versus at home. On campus, we've probably got some outlier teachers that are kind of pushing the envelope a little bit and seeing how we can use this in a school environment, versus at home is more likely to be kids off on their own grabbing stuff. It's not quite plagiarism. We're still trying to come up with names for these things, but those filters are fast and easy.
Yep. And that report, next time we land on a screenshot of our app activity report, we actually have a filter for in and out of school. So like Sergio is mentioning, if you just want to see what's trending or what's in use after school or out of that school hours, you can actually filter that report and say, just show me out of school apps, which is always a really interesting look at your data.
And Kate, I don't know how often you get this feedback, so I'm going to get it to you right now. When I'm talking with districts, and I'm bringing this up because we have a lot of people who are asking about app approval process and their interest. The question I'll always ask is, okay, you've got a process built. Now, how do you know when teachers have gone around your process, when they aren't following along? Let's say, pick your local state's teacher tech conference, right? Yeah. If you want to know a month later, what were the new things that teachers brought back from that conference? We can show it to you right here. Absent that, how do you do it? And consistently, Kate, 9 times out of 10, there just is no way. If the IT team's told, hey, I think this is in use, can you go look around? Sure, they can find it. But if they don't know where to start, there's kind of nowhere to go for a lot of our schools. So thank you for building this. It's extremely helpful.
Oh, yeah. That's your friend on the left, that new app's in use.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so we looked at, this quick vetting tools, right? When we know there's stuff in here, then that great power comes great responsibility. We need to start to get a handle on and determine if things are safe. Can we keep using them, or do we have a legit reason to say, sorry, guys, we have to stop? So now that you have, what do we need to do? What can we do, right? We've identified apps in use. We have quick ways to vet. We can see quickly, okay, so who's using this thing? Okay, you can quickly go and see filter by teachers. You're not going to go hunt down the kids. It's what teachers are sending them there. That's your next question. We can give you all of that. And it can all be centralized so the different stakeholders can access this information. So now we're kind of at this need. We now have this responsibility, this capability to look at managed and app request process, make better decisions, publish those decisions, make them available to our community when required, or at least to our teachers to help guide them. And then finally, just determining that ROI of the tools, like going deep into that value proposition, because that's, frankly, it's May. We're putting budgets together. Okay, show us what we can do, right? How can we evaluate? How can we connect the tools? And making a public facing list. These are kind of the next pieces, this next kind of part. When it comes to the cost analysis, I can't say this enough. With ESSER gone, people are making cuts. I've been having these conversations with my prospective customers all spring long, right? Our districts have saved $1.5 million in their Edtech spend in the first 5 years, like one district, right? That's a big deal. I had a district who turned on a demo for 2 weeks and was able to confirm that their LMS wasn't being used the way that they thought it was, and are going to go back to Google Classroom for K-5. But that trim in LMS licensing paid for digital insight. So can you show us a little bit about what's behind these promises? How can we cut and make determine underutilized apps, Kate?
I would love to. So single pane of glass is what we keep saying because it's really critical that all of these things live in one place. It just makes your lives so much easier. So we have an entire part of this product that is designed specifically around managing your paid apps, your licenses, and analyzing the ROI of those applications, which is a huge time saver and hugely valuable, especially at this time of year, like Sergio mentioned. So what you're looking at here is our sort of ROI reporting for any app that you've paid for where we have licensed data. What you're able to do is actually put in what you've paid and how many licenses you've purchased. And because we know that granular usage data at every school, at every course, every section, we can tell you if these are over or under licensed, which is going to save you a ton of money. The granular data, we really can't overstate how critical it is. Not every application is meant to be used 80% across the entire school district. Some applications are designed or really should be used by certain subgroups, certain smaller populations. We're going to allow you to break this down by school. So you may see that your high schools are using something a lot, and that's kind of who you've bought the licenses for, even though globally it may look like it's only at 40% usage across your entire district. The right schools that you've bought it for may be using it with high fidelity, and that's exactly the kind of information that you need when you're making a renewal decision. You can also tag these licenses by funding source, which is really important because you need to keep track of your Title I dollars, your ESSER dollars as those are drying up. What have you spent with that money? And then what is the ROI looking like for those dollars? So on the right here, you can see our kind of overall ROI reporting where you can filter all of your license data, all of that ROI data by those specific funding sources. So you could say, look at all of your ESSER apps in one place easily.
And that information, Kate, I can tell you how easy that is to get lost over time. Certainly, if it's like a 3-year prepaid contract and the principal that was driving it and the curriculum director that signed it off is now gone. But even year to year, tracking where the money gets spent, sure, it's from curriculum, but was it from a renewable source like ELL or spend? Was it from some temporary source like PTO money, et cetera? You can have a really good conversation with just the default analytics. High school's using it, but most of it's in 10th grade, right? We can have with just the default analytics will get you there. But it's this funding sources. It almost becomes your QuickBooks for Edtech, where you can do this tracking. We're now I talked about curriculum and technology, but now we're bringing procurement into the fold, and yet another reason why there's a benefit of having a single pane of glass. Again,
Absolutely.
the reporting applies to everything in your environment, but we've created a special place with specific reporting that's tied to the analytic spend. Sure, you're paying $3 per student, but only if half of them are using them, you're really paying $6. These kind of analytics.
Exactly. Yeah, that look we had earlier at the campus and grade level data, that's available, like Sergio said, for any app, whether it's free, whether it's been used once by one teacher or one class. We'll show you the usage. It's just like Sergio said, the paid apps get their own special place where they get a little bit more data.
All right, Kate, you ready? Grand finale? This is
I'm ready.
We made them stick around to get what they were after, right? But we're in this new environment. We're in this new environment where starting October, Google's requiring really a need to have teachers ask first. And frankly, this is a golden opportunity. In the past, if IT really wanted to make, or curriculum wanted to make people have to ask before using, they were the bad guys. But we have this market condition where all these districts can now say, sorry, guys, we have to do this because of Google. If kids are logging in with Google, if they're under 18, Google's going to block them until someone at the district says yes within the Google admin dashboard. So we have this need where we can point to somebody else and say we have to do it, frankly, something we should be doing anyway.
All right.
Here you go. This is your big show. I can't wait.
I know. This is my favorite part of the product, and I'm glad that everybody here seems to agree with me. All right. So, we've talked a lot about everything in use and sort of like doing all this analysis and all this vetting. But then at the end of the day, you have to make decisions about what you're going to allow and what you're not going to allow. And this is a tough process. It requires a lot of collaboration. And we aim to make that easy for you and give it a home, again, within the same place that has all the rest of the data around usage and ROI. So what you're going to be able to do is maintain a list of what you're approving and not approving. Sometimes it's almost as important to have that middle column in review, because people need to know what you're actively looking at so they can stop bugging you to look at the thing that they want you to approve. We hear that all the time. So you can get all of this into one place where if you've got many people reviewing apps, they can all share the same view and to help make decisions about what ultimately you're going to approve and not approve. And then when it comes to sharing that, it's really critical that districts, especially in states where you've got requirements to share, or even in those that don't, that just want to share out with their staff, make sure that everybody's on the same page. We give you the ability to take that list, all that hard work that you've poured into kind of curating that list of apps for your district, to publish that and decide what you want to share. So you pick the apps, you pick the fields. If you want to share, the date you approve the app or the SDPC agreement, you can share whatever you want, but you can also hide whatever you want. It's yours to customize. And this next slide is going to show you exactly what it would look like. So this is our demo district, Rollingwood ISD. So you can see here, like, we've chosen to share in this demo district approved in review and not approved. You could just share approved. It's totally up to you, again, and any data that you want to share and you think is valuable or required by your state is there for you to share as well. That request application button top right, I'm going to click back one slide to show you all. You can actually turn that on or off. It's up to you. Some folks, many of our clients want to move that request process entirely here into our product. So we allow you to do that by turning on those app requests. And our classroom management clients get a little something extra. I'm going to show that to you in just a moment.
Well, pause right here, Kate. It's right there.
Yeah.
So I want everybody who this matters to, right? Those 10 or so people that said this is their number one thing. And I want you to reflect on everything that we've talked about and then on this process. The request happens. We can even give you a Google form that brings it into Digital Insight. And that matters because now the request is happening where all the resources y'all need to do the vetting exist, right? We can give you the description of what it is. If you look closely, the privacy policies, terms of service, along with the one Edtech quick FERPA COPA checks. You can click on the name of the application, the top left there. In this case, it's Amplify. That will take you to the analytics page for that one tools, because your vetting might be, is this one teacher using it or is this many? That matters. If it's a like system and one teacher, it's like, hey, sorry, can you use this? If it's a like system and it's free and it's catching fire, well, wait a second, do we really need this paid thing, right? You all having all the things that you need to do your vetting living in one place is truly the magic, because I've tried to do this and it always falls apart. We try to put a system together, but involves multiple departments. We all of a sudden life happens within our school district and we don't touch it for 3-4 weeks. We come back together and we're starting over. The need to keep this all in one place, housed in one place where everything lives and is available with parity of information, access to all who need it. Kate, that is magic.
I love it. I agree. So that's my favorite part of the product. You'll never miss an email. We've got email notifications. You can turn those on if you're responsible for vetting these requests. We want to make sure that you get all those requests from your staff. If you're a classroom client, we can actually integrate this directly to classroom management, where your staff can see this list of approved apps in the place that they're already in all day managing their classroom. And they can request apps directly from classroom management, and those requests will flow into your inbox and then into Digital Insight for you to do all the vetting that Sergio just mentioned. So that's a little bit of an extra bonus if you've got classroom, but even if you don't, you can still, I'll click back. Everybody gets access to this. So you don't need classroom to have access to this or to allow your staff to request apps through your public list.
So, we talked about identifying the apps, going through the compliance checks. If you have the need to produce a public facing list for your community, you can, and choose what to display, right? So we got all these systems now in place, but that are keenly dependent on everything else. And this is one of the reasons why this product, for the first time ever in, 25 years, and we have 25 years of Lightspeed systems filtering, right? We're in a place where a non-filter product has the potential to be the lead seller for the company. And that is because of everything that we're talking about. I have potential customers that were considering paying for just a solution that helps them do the FERPA COPA checks, right? Leaning on other things and paying a little bit more in order to just get some analytics, right? The reason this is such a huge need and why this has been so successful is having all these tools in place in order to accomplish these three things: the risky, the rogue, and getting that ROI. And again, what do you need? Again, you guys can look at us, look somewhere else. But when you look, have this in mind. Where is the information going to be the most consistent, complete, centralized, and fast? That's the lens I want you to look at these things through, and where we stand out and why, frankly, we've done so well. So with that, just want to step back and take in these closing time, are there any other questions that people would like to ask? Again, you can also put in the chat. Let us know. Would you like Lightspeed to reach out? Schedule a call, get a more in-depth conversation. There might be other people from your team, like people have been mentioning, hey, this person should see this. Will you send us a recording type of comments? If it's worth scheduling a follow-up with other stakeholders, let us know in the chat and we'll make sure that gets scheduled. But I'll pause for a second. Any closing questions?
Just saw a question about iOS agents. Let's see. Yes, we have a Digital Insight has an agent. So if you don't have our filter, we have a Digital Insight agent. If you do have our filter, you can actually leverage the filter iOS agent. It just works for Digital Insight. But either way, we've got an agent, a device level agent on iPads to get that data.
And then there's an integration through the MDM that helps us identify the user associated with that device. We're not replacing Jamp. We actually would, part of the setup would involve setting this up through Jamp. We're currently Jamp for software for managing. So we're not so much, we're less about managing apps, pushing apps to the appropriate devices, etc. And it's more about managing the information behind the apps. So in that sense, we wouldn't be replacing Jamp as much as we would be taking what you might have a little bit of access from, the same way you might have a little bit of a version of this with your filter. We're taking that to the next level.
Yep.
Are y'all considering accessibility compliance in apps? Like
we are. Yeah, we are. We're actively looking into that. I know that's really important in general, and I know to some states it's becoming even more important. So the answer to that is a definite yes.
Okay, we got a good audience today. These have been fun.
I love these questions. Yeah. I'm looking through the chat to see if we missed anything. I think we may have
on the Chromebook, on the topic of the Chromebook, we only have the extension. So if there is a local application that runs, we don't, as far as I know, Kate, we won't be able to deliver on metrics on that. And that's tied to the API that kind of Google gives us access to.
Yeah. But I think for Chrome, in our testing, we don't miss much. That's important. But that's correct, Sergio. That's how it works.
I'll just echo this again because it came up a couple times. If it's on the device but not in the browser, we covered that on Chromebooks. Outside of Chrome, we're able to capture that activity. Because we have an executable, a DMG on Mac, we're able to see beyond the browser. But on Chrome, that's the one place where we fall short.
I'm reading the question, making sure I answer it right. Is there a way to separate apps from websites that used our logins? Right now, I mean, we report on, I'm trying to think of a good answer for that. We don't report like for an app like, I don't know, Google Docs, if you have it like the downloaded version versus the web version, it's all going to roll up and say Google Docs as an app. I don't know if that was your question, exactly the answer or your exact question, but right now we essentially report on the app regardless of like whether it was web-based when it was accessed or downloaded for apps that can be accessed both ways.
We would catch, if an example of New York Times, whether it's a local app or through the browser, that would, I'm not sure if I'm answering this right, Mike, but that would be reported within the single profile of New York Times.
Yeah.
So that activity would be collated all together in that you could then drill down into. But that would all fall within that one application profile. It's not, we don't have a separate New York Times application for the downloaded desktop app versus web access.
Yeah.
We're not differentiating between those two in our reporting.
But if it's an app that's accessed, I mean, you can split out all of our reporting by OS. So you could look at like Chrome versus iOS usage. But I mean, if somebody was on an iPad, and I use New York Times both ways, so that was a good example. Yeah, Sergio got it.
Adjustments made in the app in Lightspeed reflect in admin console? Or do we mean like when we uncover changes in the profile, like Eureka Math to Great Minds?
I'm looking at. And when we run our report, we see websites as well. You would see. So we take great care. Sorry, so I should say the question I'm answering. So I'm answering Mike's question. When we run our reports, we see websites as well. We take great care in curating our library. Like we have we won't just curate any website because we want to make sure this is different than say like a web filter report. Like you'll see web-based apps, yes, but generally speaking, like we're not going to curate the entire internet. So like the zoo website, even if a student went to it, if it doesn't really meet our criteria as like an educational app or could be used in a classroom or used to help staff, we likely wouldn't curate it, and then you wouldn't see it in the reporting.
It's a really good point, Kate. The tool is not, and nor was it built to track all activity. Like we're not reporting when people go to, I don't know, Sports Illustrated or buy stuff on Amazon, right? The tool is specifically designed to give analytics around tools for educational use. When I did a presentation at a conference in Missouri last summer, our library was about 5,900 unique apps tracked. That library has grown to almost 7,000. But it's important to note that when you pull up a digital insight report, we're seeing things related to information. If you want to see the shape of a student's activity, in some cases we can tell you down to the minute. But we're not showing you down to the minute on everything. We're showing you when they're on Google Docs, Google Classroom, Pear Deck, Quizlet, right? We're showing these things that are specifically tied to learning. So it's not like your filter report that's showing you every single thing all the time. We're keeping and monitoring and maintaining a robust library against things for educational use.
Yep.
If there's nothing else for the good of all, Kate, I'll add that you guys can reach out to, we've asked, put something in the chat, people can reach out. sales@lightspeedsystems.com is another easy one to remember, and we'll get you in touch with the appropriate account manager. I do believe this is an idea whose time has come, and thanks, Kate, for managing the team and the brains behind it.
No, thank you, Sergio. And thanks everybody for being here. It was great to meet all of you, and thanks for your questions.